So with this exercise, what we try to do is to roll out bite-sized chunks of topical conversations whereby we obviously talk about industry topics within private aviation or private flying, and then each time lucky enough to be joined by an industry expert that can offer us more insight into those topics. So guys, if you do have in future any other topics you'd like us to cover, please do send me a DM at Private Fire Show, or alternatively send me an email and you'll find my email address on our website. And if you like what we do and you like these live sessions, please do show us some appreciation by hitting that follow button, and also do show our guests some appreciation as well. I believe their handle is at Aviation and Marine, so please do follow them if you find these the information useful. So without any further delay, I can see our first guest, our guest for today, waiting. So welcome to the third Private Fire Live session. Our industry topic today is aircraft finance or aviation finance, everything you need to know. And I'm pleased to say we're joined by Andrew Blundell of Close Brothers. And Andy, thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure. Thanks for being here. Thanks for the invitation.
No worries at all, and thank you for giving up the time. I usually start with this with our previous guests, because obviously we've all been through the same sort of situation during COVID-19. But how's that affected your side of things? Have you had to work remotely? Have you been able to keep the business moving forward, or is it kind of grounded to a halt?
I'm pleased to say that it's very much nearly business as usual. So when lockdown happened, we managed to redeploy to our various homes, kitchens, offices, lofts, wherever. And to be honest, it's been pretty seamless. So we're able to do everything that we always could pre-COVID. So we're still able to service our customers. We're spending an awful lot of time on WebEx, Zoom, you name it. So we're becoming this type of world now. But I think we're all missing each other, genuinely. So the best bit about what we do is meeting other people, be that people we work with, people in the industry, or our customers. So we really can't wait to get that going again.
Yeah, I know it's the same all round. Just any industry you talk to, it's about just the people interaction, and certainly how things have been going. Things are starting to loosen, with restrictions. So hopefully flying in general can get back to normal at some point in the very near future. But obviously, this brings us nicely into the topic of today. So let's start with a bit of background. Tell us a bit more about Close Brothers and and what the business does.
Sure, thank you. Well, Close Brothers could well be the biggest bank that you've never heard of in the UK. So we're not on the high street, but we are a very big organisation. We employ over 3,000 people, and we've recently celebrated our 150th anniversary. So
Congratulations.
We're a merchant bank with a big long history, and we do lots of interesting things. So, for example, people may have heard of Close because we fund most people's insurance premiums on a monthly basis. So if you have a direct debit that says Close Premium, that's us. We have a very, very active and growing asset management business, which invests, looks after people's money, provides financial planning and advice as well. We have a large lending business, so there could be property development. It could be asset finance such as cars, trucks, buses, other vehicles. It could be industrial equipment, yellow plant, printing presses, agriculture. We also do some very interesting, more niche stuff as well. So Close Brothers is a leading provider of energy projects, wind farms, that sort of thing. We finance classic car collections, and we even finance football player transfers. So there's a real remit of stuff that we can do. Also, interestingly, which is a subject fairly close to my heart, we're also one of Britain's largest owners of beer barrels and kegs for the pub industry. So it's a real wide remit of the things that we can do at Close Brothers. But what they do is they make sure that people stay in their own areas. My particular area, and I think it's the most interesting within the business, as you would expect, is the aviation marine team.
And out of all those different parts of the industry that you cover, is there any one more than the other that you have a lot of heritage in supplying finance for, or they all kind of grown naturally during the same sort of time?
Some of it has grown naturally, some of it is via acquisition. So if you look at our logo, it looks like some railway tracks going into a tunnel, which was exactly how Close Brothers started. So the first Close Brothers transaction was, and the way it was set up was to finance railways for the Canadian Gold Rush back in the 19th century. So there's a real long history of financing large transportation projects, and this is a continuation of that now.
Fascinating. And Andy, how did you, for instance, how did you end up in your role?
Sure. Well, I've been with Close Brothers 4 years. I've been in banking and finance for 33 years now. So I joined banking straight after school. I'd always had a very big interest in aviation as a kid. I was a bit of a plane spotter. Was always at air shows, going to Heathrow, going to any other events I could. And after being in banking and finance for a few years, I realised that actually banking and finance meant that you could look at aviation deals. So after a number of years, in fact, about 10 years ago, I managed to merge the two. So now I get to do what I've always liked doing outside of work as part of my job as well. I am head of the aviation and marine team, so half of my role is looking after our marine finance as well, which is also a fascinating industry. Also very similar in many respects in terms of
great synergies,
types of assets and what we do. But the great thing about Close is that we really make sure that we employ either enthusiasts, experts, or industry professionals into the role. So although we are in banking and finance, we really try and understand the markets that we serve. So for example, Ian, my aviation sales director, he used to run a helicopter company before coming to join us a couple of years ago. James, who's my marine director, he sails competitively every weekend. And from my point of view, I was on a family holiday in Florida last year, and as well as doing all the parks, so we did the Universal and SeaWorld, etc. But I made sure that I got up in a T6 Texan with Warbird Adventures for a 20-minute flight in a classic aircraft, just because it was there and it's a great thing to do.
Amazing. And obviously carrying on with the theme of with aviation or with aircraft here. Let's focus on that now. What type of aircraft do you finance?
Sure. Well, it's almost easier to say what we don't finance, because we really do have a great remit of what we're able to do here at Close Brothers. So the core of what we do is general aviation and business aviation. So that covers both fixed wing and rotary, and
right.
At the smaller end of the scale, we can even look at doing some gliders and some gyros as well. So it could be your first aircraft that you buy once you get your license. It could be a Cessna 152, it could be an R22, it could be all the way up for some of our larger customers to a Global 5000 corporate jet, or an H175 helicopter that goes to the oil rigs, and really anything in between. We are happy to finance brand new aircraft being supplied from UK or the US. We're happy to do pre-owned. We can do some very pre-owned and some well-loved and some quite old. We're very happy to look at classic aircraft. We're less dependent on pure age. We're more interested in the condition of the aircraft. Has it been looked after? What's the damage history? What's it being used for? What's it worth? Then is it 5 years old or 10 years old? So we really are into the assets themselves. And that's partly because of the reason that we employ experts such as Ian and myself and Dominic and everybody else in my team, in that we really try and understand what we're looking at. We're not just going off a policy chart that says yes or no. The other thing we do is we have quite a nice collection of warbirds in the portfolio as well. So lots of two classic, very valuable aircraft that are probably increasing in value. We're very happy to look at financing those as well. In terms of registrations, as you'd expect as a UK company, we have most of our aircraft on the UKG register. We are able to look further afield as well. So we're able to look at the Manx M register, the American N register. We still have some aircraft. Guernsey 2 register is becoming very popular. And for certain aircraft, we can also do the Irish EI register too.
So on that, Andy, what does a typical customer look like then, and in that broader sense, for as a purchaser, and how is the transaction structured?
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's we don't really have a typical customer, which is what makes the job interesting, because as well as looking at all the different aircraft that we can finance, we also deal with lots of different types of customers. So just to follow on from the last point, just to tell you what we don't do as well, because that will help, I think, as well.
Please, yeah.
Yeah, we don't finance self-build aircraft, and right. Realistically, the asset needs to be costing or worth at least £75,000. Anything below that, it's not really what we do. So that's really where we start. But in terms of customers, we don't have a typical customer we can lend to private individuals who are purely using it to fly at the weekends because they've always wanted to. Maybe they used to fly professionally and now it's just a hobby. We can have customers that are companies. They could be flying schools, they could be charter operators, they could be surveyors. They could really do anything. We have air ambulances on the portfolio as well. So it could be a pilot that wants to own their aircraft, wants some funding for it. It could be a real large corporate organisation that's operating the aircraft purely commercially, and everything in between. The great thing is we are able to tailor each facility that we do really with the customer. So rather than having a one-size-fits-all pad type approach, we really try and understand both what the aircraft is going to do for the customer and also what the customer needs in terms of their own cash flow, their requirements, and what their ownership plans are as well, because some may be looking to keep it for 3 years, some might think it's the only one they will ever own until they see the next one they want, and some people just have a definite plan, so it's really quite flexible. Typically our facilities go up to about 5 years, but we can go longer, we can go shorter. It's the one thing to get across though on the forum today is that if you think about applying for finance, this is a bit more like buying a house than buying a car. You can't just turn up to a dealership, sign some paperwork and get the keys and go away. It's a bit more complicated than that. So the facilities that we offer, they're on a loan and a mortgage. So a bit like buying a house, you have to be approved for the loan, but there is some extra paperwork and some formal legal documents that go behind it. We have to register our interest in the aircraft as you'd expect as a lender at the CAA or any other authority. So it does take that bit longer.
And well, obviously at the point, as you just said, it's like buying a home, or seeking out a mortgage. But what sort of information would they need to provide, and how long does that period take?
Yeah, well, we're a bank, so as you can expect, and I'm sure as your viewers can expect, we do ask for quite a lot of information. We really break it down into two constituent parts. There is the aircraft side, because really we want to understand the asset, as I said, but also we need to understand the customer as well. So some customers have a really, really urgent requirement because they've agreed to buy something, it's ready next week, but they haven't perhaps got the money they thought they had, or maybe they just want to raise some funding. So sometimes it's really urgent. Sometimes they want to know they have an approval in place before they go shopping, and we're happy to work with either, because a customer can be a lot more confident in applying or seeking to buy an aircraft if they know that they've got the facility ready for them in the background. So again, a bit like buying a house in that respect. So what do we need on the aircraft? Really as much as you've got. So full specification of the aircraft, we need to understand the condition, obviously the price, when the next components are going to be up for overhaul or repair or replacement, when the next major checks are due. Has the client done a survey, where it's going to be hangared and kept, what are they going to be using it for, who's doing the maintenance? So it's really an all-encompassing suite of information. If the customer's buying the aircraft, then we can do either new or used. Again, so on a used aircraft, we would expect the customer to be completing a pre-purchase survey or having someone done it for them. Clearly, it's in their interest to do so. If the customer is buying and if the customer owns an aircraft already and wants to raise finance against it, we're very happy to do that. We may, depending on the aircraft and the size of the transaction, want to do some of our own inspection work as well. Again, every deal is different, it depends. So that's not always a requirement. One thing I would say is that quite often we're seeing that clients are buying aircraft from overseas. So maybe they're based in the UK, but they're buying an aircraft either on another register or maybe from somewhere in Europe. We do recommend that it's worth getting some proper legal advice to do that and some assistance, because these are very expensive assets sometimes if you're dealing with 2 or 3 jurisdictions. So, for example, if you're a UK buyer, you're buying an aircraft from, say Switzerland or France or Germany, but it's on the N register. That's countries you've got to deal with. So it's really worth investing some money in an aviation lawyer to make sure that you're getting the right advice, because although the ticket price might be 50 grand less than one over here in the UK, there might be an awful lot of pitfalls and problems you don't foresee, which will end up costing you more. So it's worth spending that money. If you're buying a house for $500,000, you get a lawyer involved. If you're buying an aircraft, do the same.
So Andy, during the course of a year, do you find that there is a peak moment in the year where you're lending finance, Does it happen to be seasonal, or is it just it's an ad hoc request? It happens whenever the person needs it for their own personal needs.
Luckily,
is there a trend?
Yeah, I mean, we as a bank, we are expected to bring in business regularly throughout the year. So I'm pleased to say that there doesn't appear to be a peak on the aviation side of things. So we're obviously busier when some of the shows happen, because that does generate interest. But we are busy every month of the year. There's no off month, which is good to see. We're really quite consistent all the way through. And then when a customer does approach us, obviously they do need to provide some other information, so that they've given us all the detail on the aircraft. We need to know about them as well. As a fully regulated bank, obviously we have a duty of care to our customers. We need to be treating them fairly, which means that we need to make sure that they can afford what they're asking to borrow. So we do need to get some of the financial information that you would give to a bank if you're buying a house, for example. So we need to make sure that they can not only afford the loan that they're applying from us, we also need to make sure that they can afford their other commitments that they've signed up for as well. And also we need to make sure that they can afford the insurance, maintenance, hangarage, and everything else that goes with owning an aircraft, because the last thing any of us want is to have a shiny aircraft outside that's not being flown, because all that does is then deteriorate in value, frankly. So we need to make sure that the client knows what they're getting into, they know that they can afford it in the round, and then generally we have a good transaction to go for. If we're lending to a company, which we do, as well as individuals, then as you'd expect, we would need to know some more about the company. We need their accounts, maybe some projections.
And Andy, while I've got you here, I've got one more question I'll ask you before we finish our bite-sized discussion. But I was going to say, if people wanted to find out on the back of this, wanted to find out more information, obviously they can DM you at Aviation and Marine. But is there an email address that they can inquire from your side at Close Brothers?
So all our details are on the Aviation and Marine Instagram page now. We're on Instagram as well. Sorry, on LinkedIn as well. We have a very active website at Close Asset Finance. Look for Aviation and Marine on there. So if you can see the number behind me, I'm not going to turn around and read it, but it's there. If you can see it, Alex, you can give us a call from there, and the team will be delighted to discuss your plans of what you're definitely doing or what you might be doing. Absolutely.
Perfect. And to end on this discussion, so obviously in light of the topic that we're all gripped with every day of our lives at the moment with COVID-19, what are your own personal views at the moment on the state of general aviation at the moment?
I think it's fair to say that general aviation had some challenges before COVID-19 came along. You've always got the backdrop of things like potential airfield closures. Where's the next generation of general aviation pilots coming from? It's perceived to be a very expensive hobby to get into, so that was always in the background anyway, and this certainly hasn't helped. I think luckily there have been some positive signs over the last couple of years. From our perspective, we are seeing a lot of younger buyers coming through. By younger, I mean sub 40. Lots of people are buying aircraft and helicopters, either for leisure or for genuine cross-country commuting purposes. And it's fair to say that there is some very excellent product available now. So there's lots of nice new equipment out there. It's all glass cockpits. It looks technical, so the tech's really good. They are attracting a new generation of people that are born up, that have been brought up on IT, because the cockpits increasingly look like what they're used to. So I think that's really, really helped. So I think it's quite positive. In terms of COVID itself, obviously we are here to support any existing customers that we've got. So we've have spent some time dealing with our customers that have fallen on some difficult times, and we're always here to do that. One thing about Close is that we do stick to our market. So not only are we open for business at the moment, in our 40 odd years of financing aircraft, we've always lent in that sector every year that we've been in operation. So we really do stick through the economic cycle. The one thing I would add to that is that if any customers, either of us or any other financier, for anything that they may have, are experiencing difficulties, it's really important that you do contact your bank and talk to them, because banks can't help you if you don't contact them first. So it's really important that you do try and have that conversation with the right people within your bank, because that will generally lead to something which will support you during these times. But I think in terms of looking forward, valuations aside, because it's a 3-month global crisis, there's no way to try and value aircraft for the long term. So I think we'll have to wait and see what the new normal looks like. But certainly activity is definitely on the up. We are seeing, I think, an increased level of inquiries. I think people that perhaps used to fly commercial are now looking at either chartering or owning their own aircraft, rather than going through airports, sitting next to an unknown person at an airport or going on the train. You know, so people that can afford it are genuinely looking at that as an alternative now, because they see it potentially as safer, as well as being quicker. The one thing we are missing, obviously, is all the shows. As I said before, that a lot of what we do is based around the very very friendly network of people within aviation. So certainly not being able to go to the shows and see our customers and colleagues and see some of the latest aircraft available is something we're missing. So I mean, we're really looking forward to Private Flyer in October. Well, hopefully we'll be back together again and talking about the latest stuff.
And hopefully we're able to to facilitate a people interaction in October. Just before you go, Andy, there was one comment there that was made. Obviously, what your whiteboard behind you is displaying as a mirror image. If you could just read out the number anyway, just behind you, and just confirm the website, then people have that detail.
Okay, so website's nice and easy. It's closeaviation.co.uk. And the phone number is 0203 642 5907.
Wonderful. Just a sort of comment come in as you were talking, and obviously you've told people where they can go if they want to talk and find out more information about aircraft finance. Andy, thank you so much for giving us your time today. Really do appreciate it, and hopefully everybody at home or in their offices have found this useful. Please do show some appreciation. Follow Aviation and Marine, or follow at Private Flyer Show. Andy, as I say, thank you so much, and all the best to you over the coming weeks and months.
Thank you. Thanks, Alex. Hopefully see you soon.
Cheers. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.